Just going to confirm that we're live on YouTube and Facebook. It's like we're live on Facebook.
Okay.
We are live on YouTube.
Perfect.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to another Medicare Q&A with BJ Insurance Group. In the last round, we covered Medicare Advantage with Joe. I think Joe must be out golfing this week, so we have just Greg with us. Continuing the series, we're going to treat this as a Q&A. So if you happen to be watching and you have the chat box on either Facebook or YouTube, feel free to just go to the comments box, which is right next to the video or on the side, and you can just drop a question. And if we can, we'll try to answer it for you. Today, we're going to just briefly cover the basics of Medicare Part D. We have Greg with us today, so he's going to go over, just a very easy explanation, and then we'll have a couple questions that I have for him, and then if there's anything from the audience, we'll jump into that. So, Greg, why don't you give us an overview of what is Medicare Part D, and how does it compare to the other parts of Medicare?
So Part D, I mean, they made it somewhat easy for you. Part D is for drugs. It's your drug coverage, and prior to 2006, it didn't exist. So before 2006, people who were purchasing prescriptions, there were some little plans available to them, but for the most part, they spent thousands of dollars on their drugs because there was no true prescription drug coverage. So 2006, it comes out, and then you have four parts of Medicare. So you go from original Medicare, which is A and B, you introduce C, which you guys talked about last week, Medicare Advantage, and then you reintroduce Part D, which is the drug plan. Now, there's two ways to get your drug coverage. You can get it through Medicare Advantage, where the drug coverage is built in, or you can buy Part D separately.
Okay.
You would normally buy Part D separately if you're choosing a Medicare supplement, and you'll now need prescription coverage. Like I said, if you get an Advantage plan, it's going to come with it if you choose one like that. If you get a supplement, it doesn't come with it. So you're going to have to actually buy this Part D plan separately.
Okay. Now, if you're on original Medicare, can you get a Part D plan, or do you have to go supplement and then add Part D as if you were adding a supplement or something like that?
So it's a little different. So original Medicare A and B, that's what's on the card, that's run by the government. When they created Part D, they gave it to the private insurance company. So Medicare basically, or CMS, Center for Medicare Services, set up a set of guidelines, and I'll go through each step and guideline in a minute. But they set up these guidelines, and they said to the independent, the private companies, they said, you're going to run this thing. So anybody who has a Medicare card knows you only see Part A and B on your card. C and D don't show up because it's all private insurance. So it's not quite like a supplement, because a supplement, as it sounds, is supplementing Medicare. When you purchase Part D, this is Part D of Medicare. So although it's going to come from a private insurance company like Aetna or Cigna or somebody like that, it's still going to be your Part D coverage. So it is actual Part D. It just doesn't come up on your card.
Okay. And then is there any special enrollment period for Part D, or is it just part of your standard, yearly Medicare enrollment, October through December? Or is this something that you can pretty much at any time during the year say, you know what, I have new prescriptions, I have something I need to, I need to evaluate my coverage. Can you do it at any time, or is it generally an enrollment period type of?
You have to follow the enrollment periods. They follow the same as the Part C plans do, the Medicare Advantage plans do. So you have several enrollment periods. First and foremost, most people know about AEP, the annual election period. That takes place from October 15th. It goes until December 7th. All changes you make during that time period take effect on January 1st. So that is your chance every year to evaluate, what am I taking? Has my plan changed? Has my premium changed? Or have my own personal prescriptions changed? I want to look at everything all over again and see what's going on. That's your chance to make a change. You have other enrollment periods, but that's the primary one. Now, dial it back for a second. Somebody first getting Medicare, that's your initial enrollment period. That's the one where 3 months before, the month of, and 3 months after you get on to Medicare, you can pick up your Part D plan, and you can choose any plan available. Part D plans are done on pretty much a state-by-state basis. So whereas, Medicare supplements, companies offer them in each state, and they can change in price zip code to zip code. Medicare Part C plans, they differ by region to region, and there could be many regions in each state. Prescription drug plans are typically state by state. So if you want to get the Aetna, Aetna doesn't offer Part D plans anymore. But if you want to get the WellCare RX value plan, it's the same throughout the state of New Jersey, or the same throughout the state of Pennsylvania. So my premium in Pennsylvania may be different than New Jersey, but my premium is the same all across Pennsylvania.
So if someone went to the doctors and they got a new prescription, middle of January, do they actually have to wait all the way until the next enrollment period to, figure out what your Part D would be for that? Is that what would happen?
So in January, there's another enrollment period, but it's not for changing of Part D plans. If you have Medicare Advantage, there's an open enrollment period, a Medicare Advantage open enrollment period that takes place January 1st to March 31st. That allows you to change Advantage plans, or it allows you to go from Advantage plan back to original Medicare and then pick up Part D.
Okay.
If you have your Part D plan and January 15th, your doctor says, look, I'm going to put you on XYZ drug. And you look at your plan, you go, well, gee, my plan doesn't cover it, or my plan sees that drug as a tier 5 or tier 4, something really expensive. You are pretty much out of luck until you get all the way to the end of the year and have to make that decision again. So
right.
Yes, you are kind of locked in once you make your choice. Now, there's one other way to make a change, and that's what's called a special election period. But that only comes for, just like it sounds, special reasons. So if you move out of your planned service area, you're allowed to pick a new plan because you've moved out of the service area. It's not offered anymore. You can get a special election for a couple other reasons as well. But, if you went on or off Medicaid, you can get a special election. If you moved into or out of a nursing home, you can get a special election. Losing employer coverage gets you a special election. So there's a laundry list of special elections. But again, it's not as common. You can't just get them all the time.
Right. Okay. Now, you mentioned Medicare Advantage in there. So you said earlier, Medicare Advantage might sometimes include a Part D as part of the same plan, or are they like two different plans bundled in together?
So they're kind of bundled in. So if you get a Medicare Advantage plan, again, that's considered Part C of Medicare.
Right.
What Part C does is it takes A, hospital, B, medical, D, drugs, and it wraps them in.
It wraps it all up. Yeah.
So you take your Medicare card, you tuck it away. You don't have an actual Part D. Now you have Medicare Advantage with prescription drugs, which qualifies. So a big thing that comes from Part D is what's called creditable coverage. So people go, well, look, do I have to take Part D? I say, no, Part D is completely voluntary. You don't have to take it because you go, well, it's going to cost me money and I don't take any drugs, say, or I take a generic I can buy over the, right at the Walmart for $4.
Right.
But I spend extra money for Part D. And the reason is, if you don't have prescription coverage that is at least as good as a Part D plan, you can be penalized. In fact, you will be penalized. What that means is, let's say you get on Medicare, you say, I don't take any prescriptions. I bought a supplement. I don't need prescription coverage. I would ask you to please reconsider that, because let's say you get on Medicare and you go, I don't need drug coverage. I don't take it. So 12 months go by, 18 months go by. In the middle of the year, my doctor prescribes me something expensive. Hey, come to me, Greg, I need to get on a Part D plan. Well, now we got to wait for an enrollment period, and that could take a few more months. Once you get on, now the government's going to say, okay, you are eligible for Medicare now for, say, 20 months.
Right.
And you're just getting Part D. Right. Because you had no other creditable coverage, we're going to penalize you. And here's what that penalty is. It's 1% for every month you didn't have coverage of the national average for that year, and that penalty stays with you for life. So let's do a really quick example.
Wow.
Let's just say I pick a Part D plan for $20 a month. Okay, not too bad, $20 a month.
Yep.
And you go, okay, well, let's calculate a penalty. Now, these aren't going to be exact numbers. We're going to round them. So let's say you went, you're getting a plan for $20 a month, but you went 20 months without prescription coverage. So the government says, okay, 20 months, that's 20%. It's not just 20% on top of your $20 a month. It's 20% of the national average. And the last I checked, you could look at the exact number, but I think the national average is like $35 a month.
Yeah.
So now take 20% of $35 a month, and you go, okay, well, that's $2, $4, $6, $7 extra per month. So now instead of paying $20 per month for the regular sticker value, what everybody else is paying, you just got a $7 penalty every month for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Why is it for the rest of your life? Is that just to discourage people from making mistakes like this?
Exactly. And the reason is, it's like any kind of insurance. You need sick people and you need healthy people because that's how insurance companies stay in business.
Right.
If all you get are sick people, you can't insure it because you need some healthy people who barely use the insurance. And when they created Part D, the insurance companies, the private insurers said, look, we'll do it, but you got to help us out. You got to make sure everybody's going to get on this, because if we get, if 1,000 people join and 950 of them are unhealthy people using the benefits, and we don't have anybody not using the benefits, like just paying their premium, well, then we're in a situation here. So this is how the government was encouraging people to make sure they got the Part D plan. Now, when I mentioned creditable coverage, that's important because some people have work coverage that is creditable. Some people have Medicare Advantage, which is creditable coverage. Some people, there's random places where people get like, SEPTA in Pennsylvania gives like prescription coverage for life. I don't know why they chose to do it. It's just something they do. It's a great benefit.
Yeah.
That's creditable coverage. VA benefits are considered creditable coverage. So say, Greg, I get all my drugs from the VA. I have that benefit. I don't need to get prescription drug coverage. I'd say, great. But sometimes you go, well, the VA coverage is good, but they never let me get name brand stuff, and I want to pick up a Part D. You can do it now because VA benefits are considered creditable coverage.
Okay. Now, when you were talking about that drug penalty, is that literally for every drug that you have? So if you had 4 drugs and could you potentially get penalized on all 4 of them for life, or is it one time?
It's just on monthly premium. So it doesn't have to do with the drug costs. Just has to do with
okay. So it's just a monthly premium.
A little reprieve there, but it can, and I mean, listen, it can get steep because you start going, well, geez, if you went 5 years without a drug plan, you're
right.
To the point where some people, listen, when this first came out in 2006, there's a lot of people who just never realized they had to get it. They missed the memo, and they went so many years without it that it became, I'm not going to bother with it, or I'll just take my chances. And I hate to see people do that. And that's why there's drug plans as cheap as $12 a month. So it's like, man, just get the cheapest one, even if you take nothing, just to keep yourself from that penalty and protect yourself, because you don't know, tomorrow you can get prescribed something really expensive, and next thing you know, you're stuck with that.
Right. So when I was doing some research on Part D, and one of the things I see a lot is something called the Part D formulary. Mm-hmm. So when people see that and they see that reference, what does that mean? What does the word formulary mean, and what does it mean in Part D? So
this is why it's important to always seek some professional advice when it comes to this. There are in New Jersey, let's say, use my state, there's like 33 available drug plans. Some are, WellCare has like 5 of those 33, and Cigna has 2, and Horizon has 2. They all have their Part D formulary. And a formulary is just a long laundry list of the covered drugs. So they break the formulary down into tiers. So almost all drug plans, I don't think there's any that do it differently anymore. There's usually 5 tiers. So tier 1 would be your preferred generics. That's the ones they really want you to take instead of anything else. Then there's tier 2, which is usually your just regular generics. Tier 3 would be preferred brand drugs. Tier 4 would be non-preferred, and then tier 5 would be specialty. Each company, by law, because Medicare mandates this, has to cover 2 drugs in every therapeutic category. So even if you make the worst mistake and you pick a plan that has the worst formulary known to man, you're still going to have coverage where your doctor can look at your formulary and go, okay, for blood pressure, I know there's options. For this, I know there's options. So they'll have to cover something, but it can make your cost dramatically different. So for example, if you look at a formulary for whatever company, we're not going to throw names and start going through the formularies on this, but let's just say it's a cholesterol medication, and you start looking through and you go, okay, well, let's use a blood thinner, because this is really big one that comes up a lot. Now, warfarin has been around. It's a generic for years. It's a blood thinner. It costs almost nothing. I mean, if you get it on your drug plan, it's probably $0 a month. If you went to buy it without a drug plan, it's probably $2. But anyway, really cheap blood thinner. New to the market are a couple different blood thinners called Xarelto, Pradaxa, and Eliquis. These are 3 really expensive blood thinners. They work a little better than Coumadin in that you don't have to run to get blood work done every month like you normally have to do with Coumadin or warfarin. But although they're all really expensive, different plans see them in different tiers. So if you pick this, whatever plan you think it looks good, I like the premium, I like this about it, I like that about it, but you take Xarelto, they might make Xarelto a tier 4 drug and it's $100 a month copay. Whereas Some other company might see Xarelto as a tier 3 drug where it's a $40 a month copay. And that can make for a really long year when you make a wrong decision on something.
Right. Yeah.
Or it could be making you have to want to change and go, well, they see Xarelto as a tier 4 because they're doing Pradaxa as a tier 3. Well, now you got to hope that your doctor's comfortable in changing you to that. And maybe it is, and maybe it's not, and that's what you got to be aware of. And that's why it's worthwhile talking to somebody to just run your drugs through these formularies and find out. People always ask me, Greg, what's the best drug plan? I don't think there's a best drug plan.
Right.
No matter how they're rated or no matter what they look like, to me, the most important thing is that your drugs that you take as maintenance drugs all the time are the lowest possible tiers they can be on.
Right. When it comes to penalties, are there enrollment penalties with Part D? Is it similar to anything with Medicare? Is there a late enrollment if you get it wrong? Like, let's say you have new prescriptions, you're not sure what to do. I know actually you did a video a while back that was kind of like what you would consider your top mistake for Medicare, or a lot of times when seniors are signing up, they pick the wrong plan for the prescriptions they have, and like you said, they end up paying a ton more.
Yeah.
So not only could they be paying a ton more, but if you wait too long, is Part D, is there any penalty specific to that? Like if you just waited too long and you...
we went over the late enrollment penalty.
So it's the same thing.
And then there's also what's called, so you have the late enrollment penalty, which is one way you could be charged more because you didn't enroll when you first were eligible to, you waited too long and you became, a late enrollment. The other thing is called IRMA, and this applies to Part B as in boy and Part D as in drug. IRMA is, Medicare loves using all these acronyms. IRMA is income-related monthly adjustment amount. So based on your annual income, your adjusted gross income, the government might assess you with, I call it another penalty. And what that means is if you earn over a certain income threshold, in the past 2 years, they do a 2-year look back, they're going to raise your premium. So for example, Part B, again, B is in boy, so be clear, is for the average American is $144.60. That's what most of America pays for Part B. If you make too much money, they're going to raise that premium, and it's going to keep going up, and actually maxes out somewhere in the $400 and some range.
Wow.
What people don't realize is that same IRMA penalty or adjustment gets applied to Part D also. And by that, I mean, whereas I use the example, you buy your Part D plan, it's $20 a month. Well, if you fit into this IRMA category where you earn too much income, yeah, you'll get your $20 a month bill, but you're going to get an IRMA adjustment as well. And all of a sudden you go, wait a minute. But Greg told me that my XYZ drug plan costs $20 a month. Medicare sending me a bill for another $70 a month.
Right.
That's as high. It can go as high as $70 extra per month. So there's two things to look out for. One's late enrollment penalty, and that's because you didn't enroll in the timely fashion. And two is IRMA. So if you earn too much money, and these are, we can, there's Social Security tables I can, send out, or we can look up or get for you. So if you fear that, and they go by single, filing single or married filing joint, and it's based on income that way. But yeah, if you go over those thresholds, you start paying more incrementally higher amounts, and it maxes out, but it can get very high.
So the adjustments on the Medicare Part D website, it talks about the extra, what they call an extra help program. Can you explain what that is, or is that related to what you were just covering with sort of adjustments based on income?
Similar. So, I mean, just like, I'm dropping my pen and stuff. So similar, just like you could pay more money because you make too much, you can pay less because you make too little.
Right.
So there's two really, really solid programs for folks. One is what's called LIS, or low income. Like I said, they love acronyms. LIS is low income subsidy. So it's where the government knows what you're making. You can apply for it. Typically, they'll contact you about it if they feel you fit into this category. Low-income subsidy is going to help pay for your Part D premium. So if you pick a Part D plan that's $20 a month, depending on the low-income subsidy you receive, they'll pick up a part of that premium or all of that premium.
Okay.
So on one hand, you make too much money, you pay more. On another hand, you could end up paying almost nothing. With a low-income subsidy, there's also a cap to how large your copay can be. So no matter what drug you're taking, if it's on the formulary of the plan you pick, you get low-income subsidy, there's a max you can pay, and that might be as low as $10 for something that could be a $1,000 drug. The second program besides that is usually most states have a program. So again, we're in New Jersey. For New Jersey, it's called PAD, P-A-A-D. If you're under a certain income threshold, they will help subsidize, pay for your Part D plan, and help subsidize your drugs. So again, things like the coverage gap or donut hole and that stuff doesn't exist for you anymore. In Pennsylvania, there's PACE and PACEnet, and other states have other similar items. So they're the ways to help you pay less, as opposed to the other ideas where I said there's a possibility you can pay more.
Okay. Is there anything you feel people need to know before we kind of wrap it up here, about Part D, about the enrollment period, anything we didn't cover, maybe some small details here and there that you wanted to go over?
Well, I mean, I think what's most important is understanding how it actually works. There's four parts to, well, not, I won't want to call it parts. That's going to make everybody confused. There are 4 stages in Part D coverage. So again, CMS, the Center for Medicare Services, tells the companies, here's the Part D prototype. Here's what you have to do, but you can do better than this. So what they tell the insurance companies are there's 4 stages that you are allowed to have. There's a deductible stage, then there's initial coverage, there's donut hole or coverage gap is another word for it, and then there is catastrophic coverage. So January 1st starts out, some plans have a deductible. The max deductible for 2020 was $435. That means during the deductible phase, you pay everything, company pays nothing until your out-of-pocket hits $435. Some companies have a $435 deductible. Some have zero deductible. You can imagine you would pay a higher premium for a zero deductible plan. Some companies have deductibles where it doesn't apply to generic drugs, but it applies to name brand drugs. What you have to look at is where do your drugs fit in? Because you may not care if there's a deductible because you may never see it if you take just generic drugs. Now, once you fulfill the deductible, you go to stage 2, and that's initial coverage. That's where you have a specific copay for your drugs. So maybe a generic is $0 or $5, a name brand might be $45. You'll pay that copay. The company's going to pay the rest. So using that big drug I said, Xarelto, that's about $500 a month, you don't pay that. You're going to pay your tier 3 copay, which might be $40 a month. But in the background, the total drug cost, that's what you pay and the company pays, that's totaling up. And when that hits the coverage limit, which is about $3,300 for 2020, you hit the donut hole or the coverage gap.
Right, yeah.
Now, for this year and for all years going forward, you pay 25% of the drug. So use Xarelto as an example, $500 drug, you pay $125. 10 years ago, before they closed this coverage gap, you used to pay 100% of the drugs. So when you hit that coverage gap, all of a sudden you're paying $40 for Xarelto. Next thing you know, you go to pick it up, and it's $500 that month. If you spend $4,400 out of pocket, so you go through this coverage gap, this donut hole, once you get on the other side, it's called catastrophic. And then you pay the greater 5% or some other number. So you're good in the beginning, you're good at the very end. If you're in the coverage gap, it doesn't feel so great because you're paying a lot of money. But that's reduced greatly. The most important thing to tell people is you don't have to go through all those stages, even if you take a lot of prescription drugs. There are different plans that are going to cover things differently. Whereas one company covers Xarelto really well because, maybe it doesn't cost them $500. Maybe they have a brokered price that costs them $400 or $385. All that helps keep you out of the coverage gap. And again, that's just the more important reason to please speak to a professional. Let them put your drugs into the Medicare website, work through it with you, and go over exactly what your costs are going to be. I mean, we started a new thing for our clients where they fill out a form for us. They give us the exact drugs they're taking with the dosages and everything. And then I've been doing video for them and emailing them, going through the Medicare site and breaking down what each cost of their drugs are so they can reference it instead of just seeing it on paper because sometimes it doesn't always translate. But I mean, that's what we just try to do for every single customer, make sure they understand this. Because again, you referenced that video I did a while back. There's people who lose thousands of dollars a year simply because they picked the plan they thought was a good one.
Right, yeah.
It wasn't good for them. They picked AARP because, hey, AARP, they're great. They have TV commercials. Everything's wonderful. And it's a very good plan, but it's not a good plan if your drugs aren't covered well,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think and the takeaway from this video, I mean, even for me, obviously, I'm not going to be on Medicare, but anyone that's watching or that's going to watch it later, I love pulling up these Medicare cartoons where, in this case, they have a giant maze, and it feels like, when you're navigating Part D, the amount of questions and directions you can go in is just crazy.
Yeah.
So talking to somebody like you know how to just go straight to the end, but to me or to anyone that's getting into this for the first time, it feels like this. Here's another good one. Where you have Einstein, who's like a legendary genius, but he couldn't explain the Medicare drug program. Yeah. So, anybody who's watching this video, if you happen to be watching it later on, you can feel free to reach out to Greg, Joe, or anyone on the team at BGA. We have a link right here, bgainsurance.net Medicare quote, where you can jump in there. There's a phone number there. If you want to give them a call, you can put your information in there, send a little note. You can put some questions and we'll try to get back to you. We still have a few months before the enrollment period actually kicks off, which would be, mid-October. So it's July now. Everyone's kind of relaxing in the summer, but it's probably still a good idea to start compiling everything. If you think you're going to be on drugs, if you just got a new prescription, these are all the kind of things that sounds like you have to get it all together. Sure. How much money you could potentially save, because it sounds like there's hundreds, if not thousands of dollars potentially on the line.
Simple mistakes can cost a fortune, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Just a quick dinner. We're talking about like a vacation's worth of money that can be burned.
Yeah, I remember you on the video that you did where you were breaking it down drug by drug. Essentially, it was I think it was different plans offered by different companies, but the drug itself, was like an $800 or $600 difference, depending on what you picked. And your point was that, well, you might have just picked a plan because you knew a brand name or it was Aetna or something, and you just went with it because, you just went with it on like gut feeling or something. Mm-hmm. When in reality, you should have compared them all side by side, and they all could be good plans, but just for whatever reason, one of them just has a super high cost. And, there's just no reason.
A reminder for folks too is when you get a Medicare Advantage plan, if you buy a Aetna Medicare Advantage plan, it comes with Part D. You have to take that Part D. You can't mix and match it to Humana's drug plan.
Right.
If you buy a supplement, which you're not getting Part D unless you have a supplement, because you can't mix that with Medicare Advantage. But if you buy a supplement, you buy it from AARP, that doesn't mean you need to buy AARP's drug plan. You can mix and match it with Humana's drug plan, or vice versa. You can have a Humana Medicare supplement, and we'll seek out the drug plan that fits you. I mean, majority of my clients don't have the drug plan that matches their supplement. So for the AARP supplements I sell, I may never sell an AARP prescription plan to them. So it's important to realize that, because a lot of people we meet with, again, if they just, again, you call AARP because they have the good commercial and the Medicare supplement sounded great, you sign up for that. Well, now you just limited yourself when you're talking to whoever on the phone, because they're going to go, okay, we have 3 drug plan options for you. Well, that's great, but you should be looking at the 33 options available.
Right.
So you don't have to match them together. You can go to anybody you want.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's good advice.
And it doesn't behoove you to stay there. Like, it's not like auto insurance where if you buy your auto together, you get a discount. Right. Buying your supplement and your drug coverage together doesn't get you a discount.
It does get a discount. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess even more the reason, I mean, if this was me, I would just make you do all the work, I mean, why not?
You pay no extra for it, you know what I mean? You just, if it's a $20 drug plan, you're still going to pay $20. You don't pay us anything different. So we're just something we just do for our clients to make sure they get the best they can.
Yeah, because the only way to know this information would be if someone did their own research, right? You would have to sit there and you, first of all, you'd have to have access to all the plans somehow, and side-by-side comparison, which can be tough. Or you'd be trying to speak to some agent on, from some company, and they're going to probably steer you in one direction or the other. So it's not the best way to do it.
Easy for us. We just contract with all the companies. I mean, it's total transparency here. They all pay us exactly the same, not allowed to pay any difference. We have no incentive to put you on a plan except for the one that works best for you, because our incentive is to make the client happy, and then you want to stay with us for years on end. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's important. It's look, if I get into a legal situation, I wouldn't try to look up how to do it myself. I would probably contact a lawyer, because that's what they do for a living, or like anything, I would try to make sure that I'm, finding a professional who handles that area. So when it comes to insurance, there's no reason to do it by yourself, especially when we don't charge $500 an hour like attorneys do. We're not charging you anything, actually. So take advantage, right? If nothing works out and you don't change plans because we found you're on the best one, fine. Just refer me to your next friend, and we'll go over it with them.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, well, we're at exactly 30 minutes. I think that's a good summary of Part D. This video, if you're watching it in the future, chances are information has changed, or maybe your prescriptions have changed. Either way, give Greg a ring. You can visit the website there, bjainsurance.net/Medicare quote. Send us your info, and we'll get you set up. So any final words, Greg, before we drop off?
Stay safe out there, and let us know when you need some help. It'll come pretty quickly. We're going through all the new plans now, so we'll be fine.
And who knows what's going to come in the fall, right?
Things could get crazy. So be ready to go over this, and maybe they'll extend some enrollment periods for us, but I wouldn't count on it. So
yeah, and that's still 3 months away. So
exactly.
who knows where we're going to be at that point? So
true. Still doing Zoom calls. Who knows?
All right. That'll do it for this week. See all you guys later.
Guys later.